It's Wednesday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for another day. Hope everybody's having a great day out there today. Digging out right now. What a night. What a wake up in the morning and all of a sudden there's 8-10 inches of snow. I haven't even looked fully yet, haven't gotten to the driveway. All I know is I've got a podcast to do right now and the kids are home today because school has been canceled. Quite a turnabout from the last week when it's been nice out. Our kids were out on their scooters just 2 days ago. Monday, took them out for like a long walk and scooter ride. Now there's snow everywhere. And then again, next week it's going to be 60. So we will deal with it. We'll get through it. But snowstorms are a part of life in Minnesota in March. Must be time for the state boys hockey tournament. They always say it's the old cliche, the old adage that state boys hockey tournament brings a snowstorm. And this is a perfect example. Today is the start of the tournament. And look here what we've got with all of the weather outside. Great show today, by the way. Sarah McLellan from the Star Tribune joins me here in just a couple minutes to talk Minnesota Wild hockey. They won last night. Sarah and I talked before that 4-3 win over Seattle. I'll get into that game a little bit more after the conversation with Sarah, so stick around for that. But Sarah and I talked more about trade deadline, what this team can do roster building wise, what they have to do the rest of the way. Trade deadline in the NHL coming up on Friday. Wild, of course, have already made one move to reacquire Gustav Nyquist, a player they had a couple years ago. Salary cap, injuries will determine what else they can do in the next couple of days. So like I said, got some Wild thoughts at the end of the show as well, in addition to some Gophers thoughts and a Frost result from last night. Wolves here in a minute. First, though, what I miss, let's take this thing to its logical conclusion. Sam Darnold, what Vikings did not use the franchise tag on him by the deadline on Tuesday. Feels like at this point it was like a month of wasted breath. That was like the thing that was on the calendar, so we were talking about it, we looked at it. I don't know at the end of the day if there was any realistic path for the Vikings to use the franchise tag on Sam Darnold once we add up all of the pieces, right? First piece is, if you want to keep him on the tag, that's $40 million. That is a lot of money for a quarterback for 1 year. Even if the Vikings have the cap room, that's functionally 2/3 of their cap space for 2025. Lots of other needs on the roster, lots of other stuff to take care of. So functionally, they were probably never going to tag him and keep him for 2025. Then, if you looked at it on the other side and read Ben Gessling's reporting, read kind of the tea leaves, tag and trade becomes complicated because if you put the tag on Sam Darnold and you say, hey, we're putting this franchise tag on you, but we're going to trade you now to another team. He has kind of this veto power almost because he doesn't have to sign that franchise tag for a while. And if the other team is trying to acquire him and sign him to a long-term contract, he can essentially say, no, I don't want to go there. I'm not going to sign this thing. I'm going to tie up all your cap space until, perpetuity. So you've got that. So you've got some issues with trying to tag and trade him, and I don't think tagging him and keeping him was ever going to be a realistic proposition. So at the end of the day, it does feel like much ado about nothing. What it was, though, at least was a thought exercise in what the Vikings might do next season, and now seeing that they haven't tagged Darnold, and that became official Tuesday when the deadline passed, they essentially have a handful of days before free agency starts. Teams can start talking to free agents on Monday next week, 5 days from now. It sure looks like, I know Ben is reporting that the Vikings are still talking to Darnold about a return here. It sure looks like he's going to hit free agency and he's going to go somewhere else next year. Like all along, that felt like the logical outcome, but as we keep hitting these markers along the way, we keep hitting these different kind of milestones, these benchmarks, we get a little closer to that finality. And I do think if you get to free agency next week and he hasn't signed here, and I have no idea why he would sign here before getting to free agency because he needs to cash in right now on his career season from a year ago, it sure looks like it's going to be J.J. McCarthy and a veteran quarterback here in 2025, not named Sam Darnold. Wouldn't be shocking at all if that veteran was Daniel Jones. I wonder if Jones might get an opportunity elsewhere, but what's really best for Daniel Jones right now is a good question. Could he use a year here in a better system with the opportunity to maybe play at the start of 2025? or at the very least be that insurance policy, be that guy if McCarthy isn't ready, if he's not healthy, things like that. Learn under this system. Worst comes to worst, maybe it's like Darnold's year in 2023 when he was with the 49ers, when he didn't play, but kind of rehabbed his game, learned some stuff, and then hit the market in 2024, got that $10 million deal with the Vikings to essentially be that bridge quarterback in case McCarthy wasn't ready. McCarthy gets hurt. He has the year he has now, and now he's due for a big payday. So Jones is in a little different position financially because he already got a big contract from the Giants. Darnold hasn't gotten that big contract yet in his career. He played the rookie contract out. He's made money. I'm not saying he hasn't made money, but he hasn't gotten that big second contract yet because he didn't produce off of his first contract. So he needs to cash in. Jones in a little different position where he probably just wants to revive and revamp his career. So I could see it being McCarthy and Jones here next year. I think the likelihood of Darnold coming back decreases by the day. Andrew Kramer and I will talk more about that on Thursday's show, talking about Darnold, but also spinning this forward to free agency and talking more about what Andrew observed at the scouting combine last week. So that will be Thursday's show. For now, what we know, Darnold didn't sign Darnold to the tag. He's kind of out there right now. Vikings have a lot of things they need to address going into 2025, and we're going to start getting some answers on that very soon. Timberwolves, meanwhile, managed to defeat a shorthanded, inferior opponent on Tuesday at Target Center. It wasn't the prettiest game overall. It was close for three quarters against the 76ers. It was 80-80 right before the buzzer at the end of the third quarter. Then Mike Conley Jr. hit kind of a miracle 35-foot runner as time expired in the quarter, put them up 3. They hit a barrage of three-pointers to start the fourth quarter, and that kind of put the game out of reach. So satisfying in terms of outcome, not necessarily satisfying in terms of how they played, especially for the first three quarters. There's a lot of sloppy, lazy turnovers. I mean, the 76ers, no Joel Embiid, no Tyrese Maxey. Paul George looks like a shell of himself right now. He barely did anything in Tuesday's game. So the 76ers playing a bunch of guys that just don't really make you think of the 76ers teams of recent vintage when they've been an Eastern Conference contender. I mean, this looked like a more difficult game for sure on the schedule before the season started. Going in, the Wolves were 13-point favorites. They ended up winning by 14, 126-112. Good balance scoring. Everybody in the starting lineup, double figures. 2 other guys off the bench had double figures. So plenty of good things to go around. But, largely a game that they needed to win and did win. It wasn't perfect in terms of how they got it done. Chris Finch, before the game, I thought had an interesting observation, just kind of talking about how the Wolves have played down to their opponents more this year than they did last year, talking about Anthony Edwards, saying, the first thing is the recognition of it. Anthony Edwards loves the moment. He loves big games. He loves the spotlight and all that. But an area of growth is that consistency, no matter who you're playing. We talked about it coming into the season about having 82 faceless opponents, and I don't think we've done a great job of that. That tone is set by your best players and has not been every time that he's not been ready to play, just enough maybe to affect the overall mood. Interesting there. I do think Finch maybe needs to set a tone a little bit more too, but he's probably telling them as much as he can, hey, don't overlook anybody. These are, every game is its own entity. You let a team that looks inferior on paper hang around. You let them, get some shots, start feeling good about themselves. Anybody can win on any given night. That's what happened in Utah a few nights ago. That's what happened against Washington a couple weeks ago. These inexcusable losses that add up at the end of the year. Now, the Wolves do have a lot of these opportunities coming up. Next example is tonight against Charlotte. They play Charlotte tonight. It's the second game of a back-to-back. That game will be a test for them, a test to see, how they kind of have this resolve. Can they beat an inferior Charlotte team? They're one of the worst teams in the East. Can they beat Charlotte? Can they put forth a good effort? Second night of a back-to-back, things like that. Then after that, I think it's at Miami, which is, that'll be a better game, but still a team that traded away Jimmy Butler earlier this season. Then it's home against San Antonio, a team where, Victor Wembanyama has been shut down for the year. That team should be ripe for a good performance as well. So a chance to put together a winning streak here. They've already got 2 in a row. things are getting tight in the West. Things are going to be tight the rest of the way. You can't afford to have these mental and physical lapses the rest of the way. They got enough done against the 76ers. I think overall, you have to be satisfied with the result. Didn't love the process all the time. I think they need to be sharper generally down the stretch if they are going to lock up one of those top 6 seeds and be in the playoffs. Let's talk Wild hockey today with Sarah McLellan from the Star Tribune. Sarah, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm good. It is trade deadline time, or soon to be. Friday is the deadline. The Wild, of course, have already made one move, bringing in Gustav Nyquist. Again, it wouldn't be a season with them contending, I guess, if they didn't make a trade for him. This is twice now that they've done it, but I guess, one, what does he bring to the equation? And two, what else might they be able to do before the deadline, if anything?
Obviously there's familiarity there with Nyquist, him being, in the same position as a deadline type pickup 2 years prior. And he had a very abbreviated stint last time around because he was coming off an injury. Right. But when he did finally, get in the lineup, he made an instant impact. He really clicked with this team. He was productive, especially come playoff time. He factored in a handful of goals for the team. So that, to bring him back, sometimes you never know with somebody, joining a new team this late in the season, how the transition will go. He's familiar, obviously, with the team, a new coach in place, clearly, obviously, with John Hines, but a lot of familiar faces around him in the lineup. So I think for him, he's a player that can obviously bring, some veteran experience, but poise, playmaking to the top 6. Obviously, you saw he debuted on Sunday on the top line alongside Marco Rossi and Matt Boldy. So somebody else to kind of just shore up the top half of the lineup, but also a special teams player as well. Someone who can play power play, penalty kill. Obviously, then he kind of checks multiple boxes for this team, not only, adding another forward to a team that's down a few key forwards due to injury, but also someone new to help out on the penalty kill, which has obviously had trouble this season. So if that's the only acquisition they make because of their finances and how tough it is for them with the salary cap right now, he obviously addresses, some key areas for the team. The team is in a position where we've seen it. They've kind of been in a salary cap bind all season long because of the injuries and how they've had to juggle the roster as a result of that. And so that really showcases and reveals itself, obviously, at the deadline. If you go on one of those websites that tracks salaries like Puckpedia, right, you'll see $7.5 million approximately in salary cap space. And so you might think, okay, they have a lot of flexibility at the deadline. But in reality, they don't, because they're going to need salary cap space to bring back Kirill Kaprizov when he's healthy from long-term injury reserve. So they really need to earmark money or salary cap space, to plan for his return. If they knew he wasn't going to be ready, before the playoffs, he could stay on long-term injured reserve. They could activate him for the playoffs, and that's when the salary cap disappears. So they could use that money in the meantime. But since they're not planning for that, they want him back as soon as he's ready. They pretty much have to operate in the meantime that money isn't available. So, they're kind of in a situation where it would probably take a dollar for dollar type trade to make any future changes to this roster. So probably trading a player for a different player type of situation. They're still going to explore the trade market. That doesn't mean They're just done. They're done and business is closed. But it would definitely take that type of math for them as it stands now, operating under the expectation that, Kirill Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson Ek, Jonas Verdin, all their injured players will be back before the regular season ends. That's kind of where they're at right now, really dealing now severely with the repercussions of, how their salary cap situation's been impacted all season because of just the constant rash of injuries that they've had.
Well, and some of the frustration is, like you said, Kaprizov, Ek, and Brodin, all huge players on this team. That's no doubt about it. But they're all kind of these nebulous injuries where you don't have like a clear timetable. It's not like, a broken wrist where you can say, 4 to 6 weeks or whatever it is. Like it's all seems like it's maybe like soft tissue stuff or just like stuff that's got unspecified timelines. So you don't know if these guys are going to come back. You don't know what the timeline is. So A, you're not getting help right now, but B, you can't just say, well, he's done for the year. We can use this money to go do something else. They're kind of stuck in this spot where you don't exactly know what you can do aside from, like you said, make a dollar for dollar trade in addition to the move they already made for Nyquist.
Yeah, it is very unique circumstances. Just the fact, like you said, the not knowing, there isn't a timeline, for Kaprizov's return. Like you said, if they knew for sure, that he would be ruled out for the regular season, they would have a ton of flexibility to really make a splash at this deadline and then still plan for Kaprizov's return. But, just not knowing and then, to be able to get him back when he's healthy, if it is before the regular season ends, that gives him, that opportunity to get his game in order, get game reps before the playoffs. And, obviously a healthy Kaprizov, that would probably be the best deadline acquisition they could make, or, best a change or addition to this roster is having their superstar, having their best player back. So it makes sense why they wouldn't want to, box out that possibility in the meantime. So it very well could be that this Nyquist acquisition is their only change. If that is the case, it definitely certainly puts the onus on the lineup and roster as is to help keep this team in the playoff position that it is, lock down a spot, and then know, and like they're forecasting for the return of Kaprizov, Eriksson, and Brodin before the end of the regular season. It still might be a little ways away, but then you finally get to see, this team's potentially from that we haven't really seen since early in the season, since probably early November, mid to November, the last time this team had everyone available. It's just been a challenge for this team this season. Obviously, we've seen the juggling with the lineup, but then the effect that it has salary-wise, cap-wise, you really see it kind of flare up at a situation like this with the deadline and what they're actually feasibly able to do.
Now, they are still in pretty good playoff position. They built up such equity early in the season, and they were able to maintain reasonably well, even without a lot of these injured players. They've been pretty good, all things considered, without Kaprizov, I would say, and they've certainly missed other guys as well. It doesn't seem like the West has more than 8 really good teams. Now that can change. You can get someone jumping up and getting on a run and all of a sudden putting some heat on that playoff spot. But if they're going to get this to the finish line and at least get into the postseason, which the odds are very good right now, how are they going to win down the stretch? What stylistically is the way that they should be playing without Kaprizov, Ek, Brodin?
I think one of their most recent wins, what would kind of really suits them, is that game against Boston on Sunday. It was kind of a low event game, a 1-0 win, but that's really, I think, how they probably need to play regardless. Clearly if Kaprizov's in the lineup, Eriksson, Ek, there is a little bit more potential on offense, obviously. So scoring 3-4 goals, we saw early in the season that they were able to accomplish that. But I still think this is a team that's built from its net out. So getting stingy defending in front of just solid goaltending, I think, is this team's bread and butter, no matter who's in the lineup. So as much it was, like I said, kind of a low event type game, that's what works for this team. And, a couple penalty kills, if they can take advantage of a power play here or there, but opportunistic scoring, and I think just being so clean in their own end, it's how they were winning early in the season. And I think that's what they need to do to stay in this type of, like you said, comfortable playoff position. And I think, too, it just kind of maybe hones in on more of the game that they'll need to play come playoff time. Sure. They're probably looking at a matchup against a Dallas, a Colorado, maybe even like an Edmonton or Vegas if they potentially fall to a wild card berth. And we've seen in the matchups this season, what it will take to edge those caliber of teams. And I think it's just playing true to their identity. So the more reps they can get in now in the meantime to try to activate that muscle memory come playoff time, I think that's what will best suit them come later this season.
You mentioned Nyquist will help on the penalty kill. That's been such a trouble spot again this season. And it's been a trouble spot in previous seasons too. I'm at a loss, and they probably are too, as to why they struggle so much, why they can't get that right. How can he help that, and what have been particular culprits this year in that struggle?
Bill Guerin talked about it recently too, just mentioning that, the structure's in place, the plan is good. It really just comes down to execution. And I think there have been a few situations recently too, where, they've had really solid efforts on the PK, and then there's just a goal right near the end, or, right as someone's exiting the penalty box. And, maybe that's then not officially a goal against the PK, but It's obviously a situation where they're still in their structure. They were still pretty much shorthanded when the goal was scored. So it really does seem like then it's that execution. It's that near bobble, that near clear that kind of can come back to haunt them. So it really is a matter of execution. We'll see the difference that a Nyquist can have, giving them a little bit of a different look personnel-wise. Obviously, Marat Kuznetsov was a big part of the PK. He's now not here. He's been assigned to Iowa and the American Hockey League. So they're going to have to do some juggling, obviously, just with the players that they have out there. But I think, too, momentum is a big thing, with special teams. If they get, one good kill, it can lead to a second, a third. And you can kind of see areas like this in a team's game get streaky. So I think just building some positive momentum is something too that would probably go a long way for them, and just build that confidence, just to get those plays accomplished, getting those clears, standing teams up at the blue line, not getting them set up. I think all those kind of little pieces that, you may see them as just, that's just one little part of it. But I really think that's where it starts. Standing teams up, getting sticks in lanes, getting clears, not just, getting it close to the blue line, but actually clearing the zone. I think those all go a long way in teams just finding the efficiency they need so that it just doesn't, swing momentum away from them in games, but actually helps them build their own momentum.
The injuries obviously have caused juggling of lines, and so is sometimes, the way they've played. Have they found combinations they wouldn't have imagined, or learned some things about themselves that they might like and might want to carry forward even when everybody's healthy?
I think we've seen just versatility shine through too. Like someone like Marco Rossi, has obviously become a 20-goal scorer again. But he's someone who's roved kind of around the lineup. He's played top line center. He's moved lower in the lineup. He's played both sides of the power play, the first unit, the second unit. I think they've been able to kind of utilize versatility in that way. Even too, look at the lineup currently with Matt Zuccarello on a second line, with Frederick Gaudreau and Marcus Johansson, and that line delivered, the game winner against Boston over the weekend. So I think they've been able to see that they, as much as they're missing two very key forwards, their most important two forwards, arguably in Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson Ek, they still do have some pieces to move around. Obviously Ryan Hartman was serving a suspension. He's someone who kind of can come back in now, and he has the ability to play up the middle, play on the wings. Vinny Hinostroza has been an effective waiver wire pickup from Nashville for them. He's taken that spot in front of the net on the power play that Eriksson Ek would usually occupy. He's been able to contribute a few goals since he's been added to the lineup. So I think they're just seeing that they do have options, and they do kind of have players that can play all over the place. And it kind of then makes you wonder, when they do get to full strength, the potential they have to have depth scoring, to have balance in their lineup. You're right, it's been a scramble at times, but if all the pieces are in place, you can kind of start to see that this team could, very much still be reminiscent of the team earlier in the season that just had balance, had depth scoring, played so connected, and really had a system in place that suited them, enabled them to have as much success as they did early on.
Fans want to see all of those guys healthy and back contributing. Bill Guerin, I saw his answer the other day to the question about that people keep asking him about the injuries. He's like, guys, you ask me this all the time. I could say this, and then they're not back. You're going to keep asking me. For his own sake, I kind of hope they're back soon too. How is he holding up through this? Is he okay with kind of the position he's in with the roster, stuff like that? And I'm sure eventually what we're talking about here is this is the last year of the real punitive buyout stuff. he doesn't like to keep coming back to that, but like there is, beyond this season, and they're not thinking about beyond this season yet, but there will be more room at some point beyond this season too.
Yeah, this is a very unique offseason on deck for this team just because they're going to have more flexibility with those buyouts dropping to a very nominal amount. I think they're going to have obviously the opportunity to shop in free agency, but also maybe see what's out there in the trade market. And I think in the meantime, Guerin has expressed that he still believes the team as is can help keep this team, locked into this playoff race until they get healthy. And when asked why, he said basically because he's seen them play well this season. This still is, minus obviously some very key players. This is still similar to the lineup that played so well early in the season. You have Philip Gustafson in net having that recent shutout against Boston. Brock Faber, Jake Middleton, Jared Spurgeon. You see the core of this D still there. And really, when you kind of look back on it, some of their most statement wins this season have come really amid this adversity, whether it's been on the heels of another injury, just facing, the adversity of that, different lineups, new players coming in and out. So there is a track record there, but you're right. I think that's why too, they're focused on this playoff race as is right now, but the summer should be really interesting for this team and just what they will be able to accomplish compared to the last few off seasons where spending's been tight. They really do look like they'll have an opportunity, to be maybe more aggressive in their offseason makeover than they have in the past, while also, keeping in mind, that the players they have here, a lot of them are signed, but that doesn't mean that they still can't make a change, welcome in some maybe younger faces, and, see how they are able to capitalize on this opportunity that they really haven't had for a number of years, to really spend and invoke change that way.
You wrote about Marco Rossi a few weeks ago. He's an interesting potential decision this summer. He's having another really good year. That's, of course, a little bit down the road. I mean, to me right now, aside from all these injured players, the season still, to me, it comes down a lot to Gustafson and how good he's going to be down the stretch. As good as I think Fleury has played a lot of times this year, like Gustafson's still your number one. If you're going to make it and you're going to do anything in the playoffs, he's got to be the guy he's been more often than not this year.
Yeah, and like I said, I think you saw some of that too, and that's why I think that Boston game again, it probably just looked kind of like a snoozer on a Sunday afternoon at XL Energy Center. I think that just showed, again, how they need to play when he's on his game too, when he's sharp and locked in. That was very indicative of how he can play, how they need him to play. He went into that Four Nations face-off tournament, I think, really with an opportunity to springboard his season forward. Illness kind of shut him down early from that tournament, but he had a really strong effort against Canada in that first game, even though it was an overtime loss for Sweden. So just building momentum in his game. And again, as much as this team is led by Kaprizov when he's playing and he's healthy and he's scoring goals, it really is a team that shines from its net out. And if you think about it, the way that they're designed, the predictability that they like to have in their system to operate up ice, it really does start in net. And when he's on his game, Gustafson, pucks just hit him. He doesn't have to reach for saves. He doesn't have to, kind of tap into that athleticism to make up for his, if he's out of position. He really just has pucks hit him. And I think you've seen that, in that recent game, kind of the template for him. And I think that presence kind of embodies how they need to play from their net out, being in the right position, being predictable. And really, if he's on that level for him, it really just sets the tone, I think, for the entire team in front of him.
Well, we'll see how it goes for the rest of the regular season, about 20-ish games left. And we'll see if they do anything else by Friday's deadline. If they do, Sarah will surely be writing about it at Star Tribune, startribune.com. Sarah McLellan, appreciate it as always. Be well, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
Open a smart checking account at Royal Credit Union to get no monthly fees, no minimum balance, and a $250 bonus. See details at rcu.org/checking bonus. No minimum balance required to obtain bonus. Offer ends 5/31/25. Insured by NCUA.
Great stuff from Sarah. Appreciate her insights. And then, of course, we talk about how they need to win games, 1-0, 2-1, 3-1, things like that. Then they go out and win 4-3 on Tuesday, trying to make us look bad. But really, this game did kind of follow their formula. There was maybe a couple extra goals scored than normally would be, but be patient. Try not to take too many bad penalties, although Brock Faber got whistled for 2 on one play, a penalty shot and a penalty that resulted afterwards. But the Wild were able to get out of that unscathed when Philip Gustafsson saved the penalty shot. Then they killed that next penalty. They were up 3-1 at the time, extended to 4-1 after that. Got a little dicey because they gave up 2 second period goals, got back to 4-3, but that was the final over Seattle, a team that, again, is below them in the standings, a team you want to beat if you are going to be a serious team down the stretch. So getting it done without some of their best players in the lineup, wondering when they're going to get back, and again, that's got to be frustrating. You don't know exactly when. Eriksson Ek, Kaprizov, Brodin, you don't know when any of them are going to get back for sure, so you can't really necessarily do anything at the deadline until you know that. So I think if they had some clarity on at least one of those players, if they knew one of them wasn't going to be back until playoff time, they could kind of shut this thing down and maybe add one more player. And like I said, that would be a signal. If they do make a move that's not dollar for dollar, that will be a signal that one of those players is going to be on long-term injured reserve until the playoffs at the very least. So watch for that as the trade deadline approaches on Friday. Let's finish quickly with the cooler. Gophers basketball, big day like I wrote about yesterday, like I talked about yesterday. Women's team plays against Washington 2:30 today. Big Ten Conference tournament. It's the 13 against the 12 game, which doesn't really make you think of implications for the NCAA tournament, but both those teams are right there on the cusp. Both of them on the last 4 in the ESPN bracketology. So kind of tells you something. Both of them could still make it conceivably, but it does have the feel of setting up like, hey, whoever wins this game has got to feel pretty good about their chances. Whoever loses this game has got to feel a little bit nervous about their chances of getting into the NCAA tournament. So we'll see how that all plays out today. Gophers men against Wisconsin tonight. That's a big one in terms of vibes more than it is the standings. Gophers are 7-11 right now, barring some sort of miracle in the Big Ten tournament. I don't think this is a team that's going anywhere in the big dance, but beating a rival at the end of the year after having a much better second half of the season than first half could go a long way towards vibes, could go a long way towards whether Ben Johnson stays or goes after this season. And like I promised, quickly, Frost lose last night to first place Montreal. It's a shootout, but they did lose that game. Frost played well, but Montreal gets the W in the end in the shootout. So probably a better effort from the Frost than they have had lately, maybe turning things around a little bit after a rough patch before that. That will do it for me today. Like I said, Andrew Kramer on tomorrow's show to talk Vikings. Thinking Lavelle E. Neal on Friday from Florida talking Twins. Until then, I am Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Get out of the snow. Back at it again tomorrow.